Hello and welcome to another thrilling episode of Saved by the 90s. My name's Adam Patterson. With me today is a guy who's always down for some flatlining, Mr. Ken Bakley. Hey, Ken.
Hello. Does that mean that I'm always down to
kill yourself?
Near-death experiences? Yeah, I'm always down to die.
That ended up being like way more dark and morbid than I intended. But
well, welcome to the show. We're gonna get morbid today.
Yeah. This month we're back again with 4 more thrillers. So get that edge of your seat ready because this is Saved by the 90s.
Your big sister watches ballet. Your uncle watches The Fancy Fisherman. You watch Garfield and Friends. Guess who's having the most fun? It's CBS Saturday Morning.
Our first selection this month is a supernatural thriller from the late Joel Schumacher. Released on August 10th, 1990, this is Flatliners.
Today's a good day to die.
It was a daring experiment.
I'm going next.
They were trying to find the answers to life.
Why are you doing this? To see if there's anything out there beyond death.
But they weren't ready for what followed them back.
You withheld information. That's the same as lying.
You're not real!
Kiefer Sutherland, Julia Roberts, Kevin Bacon.
No!
Flatliners, rated R. Starts Friday, August 10th at select theaters.
Earlier today, you sent me an absolutely deranged, just out of control TV spot for this movie.
And it was real, too. Like, that was a real TV spot. It made... So, the reason that I couldn't play it is because it was just music. And then it was just, like, Flatliners at the end. So, it wouldn't make any... You wouldn't be able to understand what's going on in the context of an audio show. But it just plays this song that is this, like, really fun, upbeat, like, happy party song. And it just doesn't go with the actual movie or the trailer or anything. It's just completely random. And the funny thing is that the TV spot that I did play is almost the same as that weird one with the music.
But just without the music, yeah. Which almost makes me wonder, did that one go out later because they looked at the first one they thought
they're like, this is not working. we have a serious issue with this. This is not working.
I honestly think I don't know if you could link it to people when the podcast comes out, like in as a show note or something, but it really deserves to be seen. If for no other reason, there's only one comment, and it's somebody who says, "Great TV spot, great song, great film." It's like all of these things go great together.
This all works. It all works.
Yeah. So somebody likes it.
Well, good for that person.
Yes.
I can tell you it doesn't work. I've seen this movie multiple times. It doesn't work.
It's incomprehensible, just the choices there. But anyway,
5 medical students experiment with, quote, near-death experiences until the dark consequences of past tragedies begin to jeopardize their lives. Ken, we'll start it with you. What were your initial impressions of Flatliners, 1990?
It's an interesting movie in the sense that it is a movie that is always so close to being something. Like, it's Joel Schumacher, so it's at least a very interesting movie to look at. Its concept is very interesting, and it's just a great idea to have these 5 different characters who are all going to relate to this in a different way. But yeah, it's a question of, it's not entirely clear to me exactly how the movie wants to go about this subject matter. Because on some level, it is this very sort of slick, surfacey thriller, which is fine. But on another level, it has these ruminations about these characters that are in no way backed up by any level of real understanding.
Yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment. It's funny, like, I've seen this movie a few times now. I don't know how many times, but this time watching it, what initially struck me was the Joel Schumacher-ness of it all. Like, the sets in this movie are absolutely ridiculous in every regard. Like you see it from like the beginning, and you're just like, what is going on here? It looks like they're in an abandoned museum or something, and that's where they're being taught out of. Like everything looks so old and ornate and dusty, and there's no lights anywhere, and it's such an odd, like the production design is so odd. Like it's great looking, but speaking practically, you're just like, how is this? Like there's a scene early on when they're in like not an autopsy room, but they're like in a classroom, and they have cadavers, and they're like studying the human body, they're dissecting it and stuff, and there's like no lights in this room. And you're like, wouldn't you want, I mean, if you're in like a classroom environment, wouldn't you want lots of lights, lots of like bright fluorescent lights so you can like see everything? And the same can be said for like Kiefer Sutherland's apartment in this, where you're just like, where does this guy live? He like lives in an abandoned church or something. It's so ridiculous.
It's so important. Everything about just the way this looks is so important. And so but that's the thing. It's, watching this movie makes me think maybe it's time for me to have another look at, well...
Don't say Batman and Robin.
Batman and Robin. It's time for me to take another look at Batman and Robin, as it's the other Schumacher film we've discussed on the show. And we also spent, I feel like, a good 10 minutes talking about just the individual, not even the set decoration choices, the lighting design choices in that film, and how everything literally looked like it was taking place on a stage.
Yeah, I mean, Schumacher is the one who did CSI, right? He did that? Was that him? Or was it Bruckheimer?
Bruckheimer did CSI.
Okay.
But, my fuzzy memories of watching CSI reruns make me think that, especially the original, the Vegas CSI seems to have taken some cues from... how ridiculous those sets were. Yeah. Like, just on an objective level, would be a terrible workplace.
Yeah, just not conducive. Not a very conducive working environment. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about the idea that this movie, it's not entirely sure what it wants to be. There are these sort of ruminations on not only death, but just how we live our lives. And one of the big sort of revelations in this is like confronting the people that you wronged in the past and making amends and all of that stuff and getting forgiveness. Because if you're not familiar with the movie, what happens is these medical students, they do this experiment where they basically kill each other for several minutes, and they experience like these like visions and stuff, and it's kind of a really trippy, like weird experience for them. But when they get brought back to life, they end up bringing back some of that stuff with them, and they essentially get haunted by the sins of their past, really. Like, so in the case of, so William Baldwin is in this, and in his case, he's like cheating on his fiance, sleeping around with a bunch of women, but he's also secretly taping them without their knowledge. So everywhere he goes, he sees these things popping up on the screen. Really, his is like the least bad out of all of them, I would say. I feel like the other ones are far more disturbing and violent.
Yeah.
And then you have Kiefer Sutherland. He's the one who sort of designed the whole experiment. And with his, a kid that he bullied in school is coming after him. And his is probably the worst, because this kid seems to be like literally trying to kill him. And he's able to like physically harm Kiefer Sutherland. And it's like really messing with him both physically and mentally, because he seems to only pop up at nighttime, and he like can't sleep, and he's all messed up from it. Then you have
you were talking about the you were talking about what was happening to them. You were not rating the relative badness of their transgressions, because in that case,
no.
Baldwin one, I think, is the worst by a substantial margin.
Yeah. yeah, to be clear, I'm saying like what's happening to them, not what they
Okay.
did. Then you have Julia Roberts, who she feels responsible for her father's suicide. Then you have Kevin Bacon, who he bullied a girl in like elementary school and feels bad about that. And yeah, they basically get haunted by these events in their past, and they need to make amends. And that's just that's sort of how it plays out. I feel like it's a little bit anticlimactic, to be honest with you. Like the whole like Heifer going back, like flatlining by himself, didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like why he would do it by himself, why he wouldn't like ask them first, like, hey, I want to go back in. I got to confront this person who's no longer on this earth. The only way I have to make amends is, because they knew that he was responsible for those kids' death.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in the end, I thought that it was a little bit anticlimactic, but it's still an entertaining thriller. It's got a lot of really good people in it, but revisiting it all these years later, it's just kind of like, it's like a little meh, like I like the concept. I remember really liking this as a kid. I was really into this as a kid for some reason. I thought it was so cool. But watching it now, I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. It's a serviceable thriller. It's got some cool visual elements, but like, it's not scary by any means. And I found the like actual haunting scenes to be a little bit lackluster. I think that they could have done some really kind of creative, crazy stuff with that, and they keep it pretty tame.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Now I'm just going to take us on a complete tangent. I'm now trying to, and this is not the point of the movie, except maybe it is the point of the movie, except I don't think the movie cared. Trying to figure out the relative badness of what's happening, because I think we eventually concede that the Julia Roberts character didn't actually do anything intentionally wrong.
She blamed herself.
She blamed herself,
and
then I was thinking,
what caused the haunting, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, and then I think, well, I went with the Baldwin character because he's intentionally doing a bad thing and still doing it through the course of the film. And then I think, well, the Sutherland character did kind of cause someone to die, but it was sort of just it
was an accident.
It was an accident.
And he was a child too.
And he was a child. And this is not the point of the movie, except I think it actually is instructive in the sense that the movie presents you all this information, but still doesn't know how to synthesize it. And so you're just kind of left thinking about it, but you're not really given any real... It is, after a point, it just feels like a bunch of images and ideas that the movie is just throwing at you.
Yeah. I want to revise my opinion. I don't think William Baldwin's is the least bad as far as what happens to them. I think Kevin Bacon's is the least, because he's the one who comes up with the idea of like making amends. So he sees the girl that he bullied like a couple times, maybe twice. And then after that, he just goes to see her as an adult, and he apologizes, asks for forgiveness. She forgives him, and then he's done. Like, he's good to go for the rest of the movie. So I think Bacon is the one who gets off easiest out of all of them. Julia Roberts, like, hers isn't... The thing that makes hers bad is just the level of violence and the fact that she, like, has to relive that moment. And that's what makes hers worse, I would say.
Yeah, it's at the level of she is the only one where you can't really make the argument that she committed an active transgression, but it still has to be haunted by the guilt that she feels over it all the same.
Right. Yeah. I'd say it's worth a look. In preparation for this, I did watch the 2017 remake of this, which I had not seen. Did you see the 2017 version?
I did not. I kind of just briefly read about it. I know kind of remember it happening.
Yeah, when it came out, I was just like, nah, I have no interest in this whatsoever. But the 2017 version is essentially the exact same. It's very, very similar. I mean, it is very much a remake. Kiefer Sutherland's in it, and I thought because he was in it, maybe this is some kind of sequel, but it's definitely not. It is just a straight up remake. I will say that, like, I mean, a lot of people hated on this one when it came out, and it did not get very good reviews. It didn't do very well in theaters or anything like that. And I understand that it's not a very good movie, but the thing is, it's kind of on par with the original one. Like, I mean, they're pretty much the same. I think that this one got knocked more just because it's so similar to the original one that it begs the question, does this even need to exist in the first place? And I would say no, it doesn't. Although I will say the haunting scenes are way better in this one, and there's some other kind of like special effects and things that happen in this one in the remake that are, I think, better than in the original.
Okay.
But it's pretty much the exact same.
I'm on the Wikipedia article for the film, and next to Kiefer Sutherland as Dr. Barry Wolfson, it says /Nelson Wright, and it directs me to a footnote which says a deleted scene identifies Wolfson as being an older version of Dr. Nelson Wright from the original film, having changed his name, which would imply that it's almost a sequel, but then that also says another implication, which is that if it's so similar, that means that periodically throughout history, this just happens.
Okay. Here's the issue. Here's one of the issues I have with that. Because he shows up in this pretty early on, and he's a professor. And oh, that was a loud thunder. And I thought, oh, well, maybe that's him. The problem is, you'd think that he would have like a scar. Like if it was the same character, they would give him a scar so that you know, like, oh, it's the same guy, because he gets his face jacked up really bad in the first one where he has to get stitches and he has this like giant gash on his face. So you would think that they would do that. If they wanted to make it the same character, he would have a scar. And I don't know why he would change his name. There's no reason for him to change his name. You know, like why would he change his name, you know? Like
these are... I just think that's such a funny fact, and apparently it makes it more confusing.
I think they didn't know what to do with it and just did it. I will say one thing is that people actually did get killed in the remake. All right, next up we have the first of two Sam Raimi directed films we'll be discussing this month. One being a crime thriller, and this one being something of a dark superhero film that spawned two sequels. Released on August 24th, 1990, this is Darkman.
Who is Darkman?
I gotta tell you something about me. He's a cockroach. You think you kill him, and he pops up someplace else.
In the darkest hour, there's a light that shines on every human being. But one. Darkman, rated R.
A brilliant scientist left for dead returns to exact revenge on the people who burned him alive. Now, Adam, you have wanted to talk about this movie for quite a while. In fact, wanting to talk about this movie was the beginning of how we ended up planning out this month's episode, because it came out in August. So why don't you start us off with our discussion of Darkman?
I've been looking for an excuse to revisit Darkman for years and years, and I'm not sure why. I always remembered liking this movie a whole lot as a kid, and always watching it. I always wanted to watch Darkman for whatever reason. Love Darkman. I don't know why, but so yeah, I was really anxious to revisit this, and I gotta say, like, I guess maybe my expectations were a little bit too high. It was a little bit different than what I remembered it being, but I still had a pretty good time with it. And this just kind of made me think about Sam Raimi and how I kind of miss these types of Sam Raimi movies. Like, to me, this movie's like, really, it's kind of peak Raimi, where he has a bigger budget than something like Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2, but he's able to, so he's still able to do his own thing. I mean, this is very much his story. He wrote this and he directed it, and he clearly has a lot of creative control over it, especially with, like, you know, the very kinetic camera movements and stuff like that he seems to really like to employ. And it just made me think about, like, old school Raimi, and, like, kind of miss that. I wish that he would go back to doing movies like this, and Army of Darkness, and Evil Dead.
As you're saying this, I am currently pulling up Sam Raimi's filmography to see what his next directorial effort will be, and it is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Oh, yeah, movie. That's right, because Scott Derrickson left the project.
I mean, some films, you know, these films can be good, but, you know, it just feels like it underlines what you're saying.
It does. I mean, the thing is, like, I really like the first Doctor Strange. I'm sure, like, Raimi is a good pick for that, for sure, but it's not Darkman. You know, like, it's not Evil Dead. And I'm not saying he needs to return to those franchises. Far from it. I just want him to do something of his own and get out from under the Disney thumb. Like, I'm sure he gets paid very well to do these movies, but I would just love for him to do his own thing. I mean, he did Drag Me to Hell, which was great. I mean, that was like a little taste. It was just like sort of a reminder, like, yeah, he's still got it. Like, he can still do really great horror. And
especially, yeah, and coming after doing the three Spider-Man films.
Yep. And, like, I was kind of thinking, like, because Drag Me to Hell was so good. I was like, oh man, Raimi's back. He's done with the Spider-Man stuff. And then he went and did, like, I don't remember if the Oz.
Powerful.
Yeah, Oz was that after that?
Yeah, I think I might be one of the few people who, if not saw, remembers almost as a matter of fact that I saw Oz the Great and Powerful in theaters, and that's about all I remember. But I don't remember it being good.
I didn't see it. Did I? I don't think I saw it. Nah, I'm pretty sure I didn't see it.
Who knows who has seen it?
Maybe I did see it. Who knows? I just don't remember. But getting back to Darkman, I mean, this is it's an interesting movie because it has very much a 90s superhero quality to it. We've talked about it before. In the 90s, you did see superhero adaptations. A lot of them were like sort of the darker indie comics that were getting adapted into like R-rated movies like Tank Girl and Judge Dredd, movies like that. And then you have Darkman coming out. This isn't adapted from anything, but you know, you have Danny Elfman doing this like really incredible score, and it feels a lot like Batman 89. It just has that same kind of Batman 89 vibe to it. And that's what I like. You know, we've talked about it before, movies these older movies that take place in cities that are it's always dark and wet. Like, there's always wet alleys. And this movie is so chock full of dark, wet alleys with garbage everywhere. It's incredible.
I so deeply appreciated that.
I mean, there's a scene early on where he's actually sleeping like in a flooded, grimy alleyway, and it's just like, oh, this is perfect. So yeah, I still enjoy Darkman for what it is, but I feel like I don't know, it could have been a lot more. Like, the action is, by today's standards, a little bit underwhelming. There's some cool effects, you know, some of the special effects don't quite hold up anymore, but I think that a lot of the like camera tricks and stuff are still really fun. And Liam Neeson's, you know, he's solid.
Frances McDormand's in this too.
Yeah, and which I totally forgot that Frances McDormand is the fiance. Totally forgot about that.
That was her because I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I completely forgot that she was in this, and I don't know. It's a little messy at times. Like there's some inconsistencies as far as like his bandages are like sometimes they're just absolutely filthy and disgusting. Sometimes it looks like he just changed them. There's like no rhyme or reason. Like they'll be clean one second, dirty the next. The fact that he's able to change his voice. So if you're not familiar with Darkman, the premise is that Liam Neeson is this scientist. He's working on this synthetic skin that can be used to help patients who have like burns and stuff like that. And coincidentally, a bunch of gangsters blow up his lab, and he gets blown out of the lab in a really funny scene, actually.
It is.
It's pretty rough looking, but he gets blown out of the lab and he almost dies. But they do this experimental treatment on him where they like sever his nerves or something, and not only does it help him survive the burns, but it like somehow gives him superhuman strength, and he can also feel no pain. And this results in him like having a bit of a temper, you might say. Like he has trouble controlling his emotions, I guess, as a result of this. It's all very loosey-goosey with the science.
It doesn't really pay much attention to it.
No, but he's all disfigured and stuff. His face is just completely jacked up. So he wears bandages and he's got this like duster on and this hat, and he wants to get back to work and perfect his synthetic skin because then he can get back to his fiancée. And the thing is, the reason they call him Darkman is because he's able to synthesize the skin for 99 minutes?
Yeah,
and
I think it's 99 minutes at a time.
Yeah, it works for 99 minutes before it there's cellular degeneration or whatever the hell, and it just basically melts, which lends itself to some pretty fun scenes when he's wearing the face and his face just starts bubbling and smoking. Which happens more than once. You'd think that you would let that happen one time before learning your lesson, you know? But yeah, apparently not Liam. So he, in addition to making the synthetic skin, trying to get that working, he's also going after this guy named Robert Durant, who is the gangster responsible for blowing him up. And the reason is this slightly convoluted thing with real estate. Frances McDormand figured out that there was payoffs happening with this real estate venture or something, where there was a classic villain scene where the guy shows a giant model of the city. The whole reasoning behind it is pretty, I don't know, pretty lame, actually.
Yeah, again, it thinks about that as much as it thinks about the science. Which, to be clear, I'm not going to be one of those people who says it's absolutely necessary, but...
No, I mean, what did you think of Darkman overall?
I think I'm coming down in the same range on this that you are. I think it's a very interesting looking movie. Of course, I appreciated the griminess of the setting. Just a movie that's allowed to be grimy, that's very important.
And also, it should be noted that there's some really big sets in this, and there's when he first finds his warehouse thing that he's going to work out of, his abandoned warehouse that's going to be his lab. When they kind of did that overview of that huge area, it just kind of reminded me man, they just don't do sets like that anymore. Like this just, these giant, elaborate, industrial looking things. And yeah, nowadays that would all just be like green screen.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I did like the look. I think the problems that I have with the movie kind of come with the trying to bring everything together, and that it really doesn't. There's just always this feeling of a movie that's a movie of discordant ideas and thoughts. Like it doesn't seem to be all on the same page with itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this sort of it just feels just so, I think, fragmented, that it's just not fully yeah, that's kind of my main problem here that I keep coming back to. So it's a movie that I appreciate watching, but it's okay.
I think that the fragmented nature, I think that you could say that about a lot of Raimi's films that he also wrote. Like Evil Dead 2 is pretty fragmented too, and for that matter, so is Army of Darkness, and The Quick and the Dead is also like that. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that it in the case of Darkman, it does bring the movie down a little bit, just because that fragmentation is like there's like really no connections at all, and like it definitely messes with the pacing of the movie, and the fact that we're jumping from like him working on his research to the relationship with the wife where he's like spying on her and stuff, and then eventually he meets up with her and they have their little reconciliation, and then like the stuff with Durant and Frances McDormand's job and the connection there, like it doesn't all sort of mesh, I think, that the way Raimi intended it to.
Yeah.
But, it's still, I would say, a mildly entertaining time. I think that this is sort of a victim of just time. I think a lot of the elements of this movie just didn't age quite as good as some other movies from this time. I mean, I think that the action specifically, I mean, this is an action movie at the end of the day, and the action's boring. Like, it's just not very good. And I think that might be just a product of its time. I think a lot of 90s action movies were just pretty underwhelming in general, like American action movies. So, yeah, it's, I don't know, I guess a bit disappointing at the end of the day. Now, there were 2 sequels that came out, which I never saw before, but
and you watched them for,
being how I am with this show, I did watch Darkman 2, The Return of Durant, and Darkman 3, Die Darkman Die.
And
they are really bad. They are awful. They're both straight to video. The Liam Neeson obviously is not in either one of them. So Arnold Vosloo replaces Liam Neeson, and like I don't mind this guy. I've seen him he's a character actor. I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. You probably know him best from the Mummy series. He's Imhotep in the Mummy series, but he's in a ton of stuff. I like him, not in this role though. He's very bad as Darkman, and it seems like they just didn't know what to do with the character anymore after the first one, and like half of his lines are 80-yard, so it sounds really weird. Like the mix is off. It's just most of the time he's not even moving his mouth, because like obviously with the sequels they had way less of a budget, so the mask or like the makeup effects are not nearly as detailed and articulate. So like the way that if you see Darkman, like basically he doesn't have lips, so it's just like teeth. And in parts 2 and 3, his jaw doesn't really move. So when he talks, it's clear that his mouth's not even moving. And so that's problematic. By the second one, he has this like whole underground facility built. He like has this kind of train thing that he rides around on underground, and he goes around and fights crime. And so the villain in part 2 is Durant. He comes back. He's like in a coma at the beginning, and then he wakes up. So you at least have a decent villain in part 2. In part 3, you have Jeff Fahey in there, and he's, I mean, I guess a decent villain, but at the same time, part 3 is even worse than part 2. It's just, it's really, the fact that they tried to make this into a franchise without Sam Raimi, like, I feel like the only person who'd even be able to make it work at all would be Sam Raimi. Because let's be real, like, Darkman is not Batman. He's not Batman. You know, he's not even close. So for them to try to like force this franchise out of this character, it wasn't going to work. It was doomed to fail from the beginning. And it seemed like that these were just really quick cash grabs, because they are rough, man. They're very rough. So yeah, that's Darkman.
There's magic blowing in the breeze. You can feel it at Mickey D's. The new kids are rapping the city, rocking the block, so get ready for food, folks, and fun. This summer you can get in step with the new kids on the block in McDonald's. Food, folks, and fun. You know the one, McDonald's. McDonald's is proud to sponsor the new kids' Magic Summer Tour. Food, folks, and fun.
Our third film this month is coincidentally the third feature film from director David Fincher. Released on September 12th, 1997, this is The Game.
What do you get from the man who has everything?
From the director of Seven.
What is it?
It's a game.
They know who you are.
This is Cynthia calling from CRS.
How'd you get this number?
They know where you live.
What is this?
Let's save the questions till afterwards.
And they want everything. Michael Douglas.
Who did this to me? Why?
Sean Penn.
I paid him more to make it stop.
The Game.
Starts Friday, September 12th at a theater near you.
After a wealthy banker is given an opportunity to participate in a mysterious game, his life is turned upside down when he becomes unable to distinguish between the game and reality. Ken, how about The Game? Did you like The Game?
I watched this movie for the first time a couple years ago, and I really, really liked it. And rewatching this, I still like it, and I almost wonder if it's just a movie that I'd have to deal with a little bit more to come to a more synthesized opinion about it. But I think the second time, I still liked it, but I kind of felt like if you go in knowing exactly what the movie is going to do, it kind of just seems like a movie that's a fair degree sillier than it understands it is, or in different ways than it thinks it is.
Yeah.
It's still entertaining, but I think maybe if I rewatch this again sometime down the road, I will maybe go back to really liking it, because I'll kind of take it all together. But on this one, I thought this movie is it kind of a mess.
Yeah, I mean, like, logically, when you break down the specific events that occur in the game, especially on like a second time watch, you see all the cracks, and you're just like, there's just no way this would all happen this way. It wouldn't.
Oh yeah, no, I that's not exactly my point of concern. Because of course it wouldn't. But yeah, it's just, I think it lets you fill in a lot of the work about what you think it's trying to tell you.
Yeah.
And the second time you realize, is it doing that because it wants you to think this for yourself, or is it doing it because it just doesn't really care?
I mean, I don't know. I thought of it as like just a pretty surface level thing, like almost like a Christmas Carol type of situation where it was, letting it was this man, this rich, miserly guy played by Michael Douglas. It was him learning a lesson through this game, and I think that's just sort of what it is on the surface. And I'm not sure that it goes deeper than that, to be honest.
No. The first time I watched it, I really thought it did. I don't know exactly what I thought it was saying, but I really thought it was.
And you know, it doesn't necessarily have to go deeper than that. I think that at the end of the day, it's a wildly entertaining thriller.
Absolutely.
I still have a great time revisiting this, even though obviously I know what happens in the end. I know everything about the game. I know all of that stuff. It's still great to go back and revisit it. And I think you can say the same thing about a lot of Fincher's earlier films. You could say the same about Seven and Fight Club. Like, even though you know the twist or how those movies end, they're still great to go back and revisit time and again. And I think that the game is, you know, one of those examples. I don't think that it's like ever regarded as like the upper echelon of Fincher, but I think, I don't know, I think it's maybe his most underrated, perhaps.
Yeah, it doesn't quite get talked about as much. I think as you were talking about that, it also kind of helped me realize what this gap is, and I think it is something that I was perhaps subconsciously doing, which is comparing my opinions of it on the second watch to my opinions of it on the first watch. And I think the first watch, it's you just kind of, I just really enjoyed going along with it, just being able to kind of ride with it. And after a point, you realize that, just don't accept a single thing that's happening as true, and eventually it'll be proven not to be true. It'll be going another layer deeper than that. And so I think on the second watch, for me, when I knew that, I kind of stayed in that same headspace, which is kind of a damaging headspace to watch a movie in, because contrary to what you learn on the internet, watching a movie is not about trying to despite the poster of the film, taking a movie's plot and turning it into a puzzle that you have to solve once.
Right.
Whereas I think if I give it a little bit more time, I'll come back to it, and I think I might be able to enjoy just a little bit more of the craft of it, or be able to grapple a little bit more with, maybe I have some actual qualms with how it's maybe put together. And I also just learned the fun fact, I thought it was maybe 2 or 3 years. It was exactly 3 years, looking at Letterboxd, to the day between my first and second watches of this movie.
There you go.
August 13th, 2018 and August 13th, 2021.
Nice. Huh, that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you haven't seen the game, it is definitely worth a look, especially if you are familiar with the work of David Fincher, if you're a fan of David Fincher, if you liked, you know, his newer movies. I think that his style is prevalent here. So I think that if you're familiar with, you know, Gone Girl, Social Network, Zodiac, you know, his newer movies, you will still be able to, you know, find yourself in familiar territory here. And I think that you'll have a really good time with it. I mean, you have pretty decent cast. I'd say Michael Douglas, couldn't think of somebody better to play in the lead than Michael Douglas. He does a great job. This seems like a character that is tailor fit for him.
It's like a classic Douglas character.
Yeah. I mean, it's like your Gordon Gekko type character. And then you have Sean Penn as his younger brother Conrad, which it's funny when you see these two acting opposite each other, because you're like, man, they really could be siblings. Like they look like siblings. And I think that they both had a good chemistry. I think that they acted. Unfortunately, I wish they were together more in this. In fact, I wish Sean Penn had a bigger presence in this, but when he is here, he's great. And then Deborah Kara Unger as Christine. She's great in it as well. She plays someone who, she's like a waitress, but maybe she's involved with the game somehow. We don't know how deep she's involved, all of that stuff. And then got a lot of other smaller roles in there as well that
Yeah.
are good. So
Yeah.
there's this guy Charles Martinet who
Mm.
was in this. He does the voice of Luigi and Mario.
He does the voice of a lot of.
That's crazy.
He does the voice of a lot of video game characters, especially.
Yeah, Wario, Waluigi. Yeah, wow. Did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also am not sure like what character he was in this movie. Nicholas's father. Oh, so it was the. Okay, so it's like in the flashbacks and stuff. Okay. One thing that I should also mention, the intro to the game. I totally like forgot about this. If you're familiar with the show Succession on HBO, the intros are essentially the exact same. Have you seen Succession, or at least the intro to Succession?
Seen the intro to Succession.
Is it not like eerily similar? They have it's where it's like the old like 8mm home video footage, and they even have the exact same shot where it's like the dad standing on the front porch with the kids.
Yeah. I'm making that connection now. It had been a minute, but yeah,
it's very similar.
Yeah,
I'm sure other people have noticed that there's no way that it's a coincidence either. Like I'm fairly certain that Succession had to be like seeing the game and like was like, oh, that would be perfect for Succession, the intro. It's like the same concept too, where it's like this super rich family and everything. What a great show. What's your take on Fincher? Are you a Fincher fan?
I like Fincher. I really like a lot of his movies. I think the one of his that I've probably seen the most is The Social Network, because this is not at all an original take. In fact, at the end of 2019, which was of course 50 years ago, there was I participated in in a survey, I think for IndieWire. We were talking about the movie that we thought was maybe like best defined the 2010s decade that was just ending, and I think like a plurality of everyone else who did the survey picked The Social Network because you can watch it kind of. I first saw it within a few years of its release, and you think of it as a kind of a movie about a recent history trying to piece together these personas, these people that would come together to create this giant, technological and cultural event. And then as time goes on, you kind of realize, like watching it in whenever I watched it last, I guess 2019, it's like, it feels like a warning from the future.
Yeah.
It's like a profound warning from the future about what these people are going to do.
Yeah, I haven't seen that since I saw it in the theater. I should revisit that.
It's a lot to watch now. It's a lot.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I really liked it. The only Fincher movies that I did not like were I didn't like Mank. I
didn't like it either.
I didn't like Mank. I did not like The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Could not get into that at all. And I did not like Panic Room when I saw it the first time.
I haven't seen Benjamin Button. I saw Panic Room a long time ago, and I don't remember what I thought of it.
I'd like to revisit that because I'm wondering if I would like it more now. Because back when Panic Room came out, I was in like a really kind of jaded, super cynical, like cinephile phase where I just hated everything that was even remotely mainstream.
I've been like 18 when this came out, so
yeah,
I feel like that's probably not. Well, sort of wasn't for me.
I don't really have anything else to add about the game. This is available on Netflix, so if you haven't seen it, I would say check it out on Netflix before it disappears. And it's a really good transfer. Whichever one is on Netflix, it looks really good.
Yeah. Oh no, this is a very nice looking movie.
Last on our list is the second Sam Raimi title we mentioned earlier, a gritty crime thriller with Billy Bob Thornton and Bill Paxton, Released on January 22nd, 1999, this is A Simple Plan.
Look at this! Just like we found lost treasure. We're like Robin Hood. You want to keep it?
Sometimes good people do evil things.
Part of that is my money. Like there's two sides now. You're my brother.
Bill Paxton.
You gotta make this look like it was an accident.
Billy Bob Thornton.
What do I get?
Bridget Fonda.
He's gonna shoot you both.
From the New York Times best-selling novel. A Simple Plan.
I wish somebody else had found that money.
3 blue-collar acquaintances come across millions of dollars in lost cash and make a plan to keep their find from the authorities. But it isn't long before complications and mistrust weave their way into the plan. I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. Adam, what did you think of A Simple Plan?
So, I used to really love this movie when I was younger. And I don't know, man. Like, watching it now, I still like it. But this is another one where when I watch it now, I just feel like there are other movies that do this type of thing better. Like, they do this type of movie better. And while I did enjoy myself, I found myself also being very frustrated with the characters and their actions in this movie. Particularly like Billy Bob Thornton's character, which I think that he's the VIP or the MVP of this movie. I think his character is by far the standout. But his actions are sort of understandable because he's such a dullard in this. But Bill Paxton's character is Hank. He's supposed to be like the level-headed one. He's the smart one. And he's the one who makes like the dumbest decisions when it comes to what they're going to do with this money. And I found myself being like kind of frustrated.
I really like this movie. And I just rewatched it. I think I was mentioning before we started. I just finished rewatching it literally right when we started recording, right before. And I think what's interesting to me is that we've talked about movies this month that we liked looking at how they looked or kind of how they went about their business plot-wise. But I think what really draws me into this movie is just watching these actors work with these characters. I think I get what you're saying about the Paxton character, but what makes it so interesting to me, what makes his performance so interesting to me, is that it is a ostensibly rational character who is increasingly in a situation where he is completely out of his depth and doesn't actually know how to navigate it. And I think it is that juxtaposition that serves as the gateway of a lot of what I appreciate about this movie.
He also is someone who I believe is easily influenced by others. Like, he even says as much in the movie. A lot of the decisions that he makes are based on his wife, played by Bridget Fonda, and like what she's telling him to do. And he goes to do that, and then he screws it up, but then he later blames her because she was the one who suggested that. So they find this money, and they decide to put some of it back. So they want to put $500,000 of it back. They find it in the woods. There's a plane that has crashed in the woods. They want to put $500,000 back so that when someone inevitably does find the plane, it looks like that's all the money that was there. It's a dumb idea, but Bridget Fonda is the one who tells him, like, you should just put some of it back and blah, blah, blah. This is where the things start to fall apart because when they go to put the money back, a local, like a farmer who lives nearby, ends up finding them, and they end up killing this guy. And it just begins to snowball from there and gets a little bit out of control. It's very Coen Brothers-esque, I would say. It definitely has that Coen Brothers influence there, which I believe is, if I remember correctly, Sam Raimi and the Coen Brothers grew up together. Like, they sort of learned from each other as far as like filmmaking and stuff. And I believe that Sam Raimi was the one who like got the Coen Brothers into the industry and stuff.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because I read Bruce Campbell's autobiography, like when I was in high school, and I remember large portions of that just talking about them as kids and like growing up with the Coen brothers and making movies and stuff. So yeah, it seems fitting that Sam Raimi would also kind of play within this environment. You have this really harsh, cold, always snowing environment with these like the synopsis says, these like kind of blue collar workers down on their luck, struggling, find $44 million, and then screw it all up. and then he burns it. Idiot. What an idiot.
Again, I think that's what's so interesting about this character. It's that continued sense that he is trying to deal and provide himself like this cover of saying that he has the ability to control the situation, that he has the ability to make these ostensibly rational decisions. But as the movie goes on, it's increasingly clear that he is just not like it's just this I think I can channel some of that frustration you're feeling, but in a way that kind of makes me appreciate, if nothing else, just I think Paxton is really good at communicating that.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I thought he was great in it. I loved his character. I think that he was perfectly cast in this role as well. Same with Brent Briscoe, who is Lou, who is the third member of their little posse. He was great too. I mean, like where Billy Bob Thornton's character is Jacob is kind of an idiot, this guy Lou is 10 times more of an idiot. And the fact that Bill Paxton wanted to involve or got them involved in any decisions at all and told them anything, like the fact that he would tell his brother these things, so stupid. He's such a dum-dum. And things end up escalating very quickly and have violent ends. At least he was smart enough, or I don't even think it was him, actually. I think it was Bridget Fonda's character, his wife, who figured out that the FBI agent was probably not an FBI agent.
Yeah.
Played by Gary Cole.
Such a good cast in this.
Oh yeah. Good cast, good setting. I love movies that take place in like just harsh, cold.
Yes.
I don't know why. Yeah. I just love that setting.
I also found out looking back when I logged this on Letterboxd before we started recording. So this is the second time I watched it. I watched it in August, but the first time I watched it was indeed in February.
Oh, okay.
Good time to watch this movie.
Yeah, definitely.
You live somewhere where it's cold in February.
So where do you land on Sam Raimi's filmography? Are you a fan of his stuff in general, or like how you feeling?
I know the broad outlines of it, but I don't really think I'm in a position where I can like give a definitive take on it. I think I would need a little bit more time to maybe watch some more things or just sit with them a bit longer. But I think he's an interesting filmmaker who is able to navigate just a lot and keep a vision through it, which is just and even in a movie like this, just having such a good cast, but also being such a good director of actors here, and kind of keep us kind of cognizant of where we're going here, while also emphasizing just the amassing uncontrolled chaos of like these characters delusionally thinking that they're controlling their surroundings as they make these decisions. I just think that's a really important point to it that comes through quite well.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess a lot of that would also be for the script, which is by Scott B. Smith, based on a novel of the same name, which I have not read.
Nor have I. I'm sure. I think it was a bestseller according to the trailer. So it seems pretty cool. I'm a fan of Sam Raimi. I think that I think his earlier career was certainly my favorite. I love Army of Darkness and the Evil Deads. I love The Quick and the Dead. I like this A Simple Plan. And that's kind of where it starts to fall off for me after A Simple Plan, because after that he did For the Love of the Game and The Gift. I didn't see For the Love of the Game. I don't think I saw The Gift either. I remember I was working at the movie theater when that came out and like nobody saw it. I like the Spider-Man trilogy. I remember not liking the third one, but 1 and 2 were fine. And I really liked Drag Me to Hell a lot. So I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. I want Raimi to go back to doing smaller scale horror movies or thrillers where he gets to just do all kinds of wild, crazy stuff with the camera. That's what I want. He didn't really do that too much in this. I think that maybe this is the movie where he sort of transitioned into like more kind of standard cinematography and stuff. Because I mean, this movie looks good, but I didn't think it was like super style. And I mean, it's not that type of movie, so it's understandable why he wouldn't. But I feel like, I think you could still do some like visual flourishes here and there to like punch it up a bit. And I don't feel like that. It's very, very subdued as far as the cinematography in this. And then you can kind of see that throughout the rest of his career. Drag Me to Hell does some stuff like that. That's certainly more of a return to form. But for the most part, most of his movies are pretty standard from there on out. The Quick and the Dead, though, did we cover that on this show?
Nah.
I'm a big fan of The Quick and the Dead. I just saw it. I could have sworn we talked about it on this show, but that still has his sort of crazy camera stuff in it. So that's still happening during that. But anywho, I would definitely recommend A Simple Plan. It is well worth a look. I don't know. Maybe that's one of Raimi's more underrated titles, because you don't really hear people talking about A Simple Plan either.
No.
You hear people talking about Spider-Man 2 way more, unfortunately. All right, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this month. I thank you so much for listening. You can send us your favorite 90s thrillers to 90sfilmpulse.com or by sending us a message on Twitter or Facebook at 90spod. Also, please remember to review us on iTunes if you get a moment. That would be really awesome. Until next month, for Ken Bakley, my name's Adam Patterson. This has been Saved by the 90s.
Bye, everyone.